There is a big problem with how we see human history, and the problem is technology. Maybe I should say that another way. How about the evolution of technology? There are two sides to the coin that you may call the history of technology. On one side, which is considered mainstream, it says that the ancients were smart and made pyramids themselves and tracked the position of stars in the sky, but their technology was still primitive. And then there's the other side, which a lot of times is considered crazy. Crazy speculation for claiming that Egyptians were generating electricity in the pyramids.
The Great Pyramid is itself a power generator, and that energy is broadcast from the pyramid. It's picked up by the transmitters, which are the obelisks, placed at key sites, made of red granite that are able to be tuned to the specific frequencies coming from the pyramid.
The ancient people also knew how to fly, and they could contact the stars. And the last part is where these alternative history theories go bananas, because the people who propose these theories often claim that this lost advanced technology was possible only because of the interstellar connection. In simple words, this meme. These controversial historical claims are often criticized for downplaying the achievements of the ancient civilizations because they were not Europeans. But what if there is a third explanation? A possibility that would explain the existence of advanced ancient technology without making extraterrestrial claims along with what happened to all that knowledge. Welcome to Nutty Productions. Today we're looking back at some of the technological mysteries of the pre-Egyptian technology that is possibly a remnant of a preceding civilization. For instance, when it comes to the Serapeum of Saqqara, we are not even sure what to ask. According to academic historians, the Serapeum was also built around the 13th century BC. But if that's true, why did they choose to build it under the step pyramid of Djoser? The pyramid predated the Great Pyramid of Giza and was already around 1400 years old. A long hallway with connected tunnels that are guarded by a long series of sphinxes has been classified as a catacomb and a temple dedicated to the goddess Serapis. The early smaller chambers do contain a number of New Kingdom Egypt-style wooden sarcophagi with mummified bodies of bulls inside them. But what they found in the Grand Gallery would blow your mind. 24 large black granite boxes measuring over 3 meters in height, 4 in length and over 2 in depth, with a weight estimated at around 80 tons. Each box was inserted in a niche on the lower floor. They looked like sarcophagi, but there was no sign showing they were used as sarcophagi. Several mainstream historians claim that these boxes were also used for mummified bulls. But where are the bulls? Because the boxes are empty.
All the boxes were opened except one. When August Mariette, 1860, found the place, he found all open except one. So he used gunpowder to open his way through that one. And he said he found a mummy of a bull.
Some assumed that these mummified bulls were stolen. Okay, so if you're saying that the grave robbers ignored the mummified bulls in the early tunnels and also ignored the treasure present in the Grand Gallery to somehow accomplish lifting 30-ton strong granite lids to steal specific mummified bulls? How? How does that even make sense? It doesn't take a trained eye to realize that the builders of these granite boxes had the skill to achieve extreme polishing on the granite surface. Only 3 of these containers have rough-looking hieroglyphic inscriptions carved on them, and the handiwork doesn't match the quality of the crafting of the boxes. So, could it be possible that the hieroglyphs haven't been decoded yet? Were they added later? And what exactly was the purpose of such precisely crafted boxes? Another tomb that very likely held an artifact that is potentially capable of redefining history is the tomb of Prince Sabu. Prince Sabu was no Tutankhamun. In fact, Sabu never became a pharaoh. He wasn't anywhere close to the ascension. He was a son of the famed pharaoh Anajib of the First Dynasty. Sabu never rose higher than a high official and an administrator of a province, but still got a royal burial at Saqqara, not too far from the step pyramid of Djoser. There were a substantial number of treasures buried with him suited to the rank and familiar position of a prince. Most of these were nothing out of the ordinary: animal bones, flint implements, pottery vessels, ivory items, stone bowls. But one item stood out like a sore thumb: a disc broken into numerous pieces. It took a lot of effort to reassemble this disc, but once done, it resembles a round-bottomed bowl and has 3 extremely thinly carved curving lobes at roughly 120-degree intervals around the bowl's periphery. These lobes are separated from the rim by 3 biconvex holes. In the center of the disc is a thin tube roughly 10 centimeters in diameter. This disc is made of meta-siltstone, which Egyptologists refer to as schist. It's porous, it's a fragile rock that would be extremely difficult to carve, especially in such delicate detail. It has the possibility of flaking when worked and can be crushed very easily when tools are applied to it. So, how did they even carve it 5,000 years ago when most likely the tools were made of only stone and copper? And what exactly was this disc for? Most historians would immediately dismiss it as an incense burner or part of a vase, but many think the truth is far more interesting. Even a simple observation could make you question if this intricate object is part of a bigger mechanism because the disc appears to be quite similar to the modern pump impeller. A recreated 3D printed copy of this artifact created a powerful vortex on applying propulsion to it. I mean, think about it. Why would they add specifically folded lobes in a slightly concave shape to this disc back in time if there was no purpose for it? And we're talking about a civilization that thrived on irrigation in a desert. Later in their history, they perfected water management through basin irrigation, a process that allowed them to control the rise and fall of the river. Yeah, they were capable of maximizing their crops and boosting their agricultural capabilities. So why should it be odd to consider that they made attempts at creating an advanced design that would help them irrigate land quickly and efficiently? Another question is, if they had this disc, why did they go back to more primitive methods? Maybe because the other methods seem more practical to them. I mean, who knows? But this wasn't the only time a more advanced technology was rejected. In the 1st century CE in Egypt lived a Greek scholar named Heron, who probably created the prototype of an engine which never took off because the Roman government had too many slaves to automate anything. The disc of Sabu also has an older relative that dates to pre-dynastic Egypt and shows 3 snakes leaping up from the center of a disc made of clay, a material that is not exactly practical. But could it possibly have been an exhibit model? This possibility has also stoked the theory that both these discs could have been replicas of another disc that was made of metal and used by ancient aliens who revealed their knowledge to ancient Egyptians. I mean, yeah, such theories take away the credit due to the innovation skills of ancient Egyptians, but science also requires keeping an open mind. Some have come up with seemingly more rational ideas, like the 3 lobes of the disc were used to hold strands of silk or rope, and when the disc was spun, it would weave the 3 strands into one, creating twine and thicker ropes. Funny thing is though, this theory is often dismissed by Egyptologists for being too straightforward. They assumed that the Egyptians would not go to such extreme lengths to create this nearly impossible to craft disc just to weave fibers when other methods were available quite early on. But again, there's a possibility that the disc of Sabu was a crucial part of a more advanced invention we haven't discovered yet. Could there also be a possibility that somewhere between the pre-dynastic Egypt and the Old Kingdom period, Egypt may have suffered an information loss similar to the Bronze Age collapse? Imagine if a huge catastrophe occurred like a planet-wide earthquake, a meteor collision wipeout, or a nuclear fallout. The surviving population may not remember how to build a particle collider 2 centuries later. What if there is some evidence that may support that idea? Well, historians may not be feeling what's about to come next. Let's get into the Shemsu-Hor. The Shemsu-Hor, which literally means followers of Horus, are figures from the pre-dynastic Egypt that are a total mystery to historians for now. That is why mainstream scholars mostly consider them legends. Our knowledge of Shemsu-Hor mostly comes from the Palermo stone. This stone consists of an incomplete list of Egyptian pharaohs and kings dating back to the 5th dynasty, but also mentions rulers of the time before the 1st dynasty. This matches scattered references in Coptic texts and the writings of Manetho, an ancient Egyptian priest and historian, who also mentioned them in his writing. But for real, we gotta take these writings with a grain of salt, because Shemsu-Hor has been mostly referenced as a lineage of demigods or god kings. Now, wait a second, didn't most Egyptian pharaohs consider themselves gods or at least claim to be descendants of gods? These legendary stories paint a vivid scene of a lush, green Egypt where harvests were huge and science and advancement flourished like some futuristic city. We already talked about how Egypt was actually a more fertile land 8 to 10,000 years ago, and if we take into account that a dark period of information loss did happen between the Old Kingdom and the rule of Shemsu-Hor, then there's a good chance they were really a more advanced version of ancient Egypt than we know. To be honest, ancient Egyptians paved the path of progress in astronomy, mathematics, and science, which could possibly be the remains of knowledge they inherited from their ancestors. Now, how can we talk about remains and not do a video about the Great Pyramids of Giza? Alien spaceships, time portals, wireless power plants, wormholes, resurrection chambers, you name any sci-fi concept, and there are potential theories about pyramids that adhere to that concept. But the historical academic fraternity has enough evidence and text to support that these pyramids are meant to be primarily tombs. But there are many scholars who don't deny that these incredible constructs were possibly more than just tombs. There are many chambers in these pyramids that are yet to be discovered and explored. Let's just say there are probably more questions than answers about these pyramids, precisely 5 kilometers southeast of Giza. At walking distance from the Great Pyramids of Giza is Zayed El Aryan, 2 unfinished pyramids that have their own story to tell. One is known as the unfinished North Pyramid of Zayed El Aryan, and the other, smaller one, is known as Layer Pyramid. Now, archaeologists say that they are incomplete pyramids, but there is a theory that these pyramids were completed and demolished long ago. The theory further claims that the underground building isn't a burial chamber or grave, and the granite bathtub archaeologists discovered isn't actually a sarcophagus. Italian archaeologist Alessandro Barsanti discovered these pyramids remnants in 1900, and for some reason only he excavated this site. After 2 world wars and Egypt's independence, nobody got another chance because the Egyptian government put the site in a restricted military zone and banned further excavation of the location. Interestingly, the North Pyramid at its base is 200 meters long, making it nearly as tall as the Great Pyramid of Giza. Now, from this rock, a massive descending tree was carved, leading to a subterranean chamber. Every chest and locker found on this site has turned out to be empty. There are no remains in these pyramids, and yet historians have maintained the theory that these pyramids, like their neighbors at Giza, had to have funerary purposes. But some scholars are saying, wait a minute, no. According to their theory, the pyramid structure and inner architecture show that they were technical instruments designed to gather energy from the earth and the cosmos and likely harness its energy for many purposes. You know the concept of wireless transmission of electricity that drove Tesla crazy? Many alternative historians have claimed that pyramids were used as conductors or transformers to receive and transmit electricity in the classic Egyptian period. That's a bold claim that may sound crazy, but could there be some truth to it? At the foot of the North Pyramid, Barsanti's team found a granite tank with an unknown liquid in it that alternative theorists have often used as a base for the assumption that there were storage and pipelines for liquids and gases in the pyramid, which kind of feels a bit out of reach. These pyramids were also built around 4,000 to 5,000 years ago, which makes them more or less as old as the pyramids of Giza. Their estimate is that the lower pyramid was built by the pharaoh Kaba during the 3rd dynasty, and the North Pyramid began construction during the 4th dynasty's rule. But would Egypt allow further research on these pyramids? Why were these pyramids demolished if that is the case? And what technology was possibly employed in these pyramids if true? Will we ever learn the truth? Kind of hard to say. Let's talk about the Osirian, the ancient Egyptian temple in Abydos. It's also known as the tomb of the god Osiris, who was betrayed and slain by his brother Seti I. The current Egyptologist consensus is that this temple was built by Seti I, who ironically was named after Godset. Seti I was the 2nd king of the 19th dynasty during the New Kingdom period of ancient Egypt. Yeah, that was a lot, right? Let me say it again so you can remember. 2nd king of the 19th dynasty during the New Kingdom period. Seti I is known mostly today for his profound work in architecture. He built this, and of course, his own temple. And adjacent to his temple, there is the Temple of Osiris, or for short, the Osirian. They're just a few of the many buildings he ordered built that you can see during Luxor day tours.
When King Seti was building his temple, he had a dream in which the Egyptian god Osiris appeared to him. And he told Seti that if he was to dig behind his temple location, that he would find something of enormous significance. Seti digs 40 feet beneath the temple and finds the tomb of Osiris.
So if the Osirian was truly built by Seti I, then the temple is roughly about 3,300 years old. But if so, then why does the architecture not match the rest of Seti I's works? It kind of makes your head explode, because maybe the answer is right in front of all of us and nobody wants to even acknowledge it. Abydos was not a contemporary city, even in the times when Seti I and his son Ramses II, 2 mighty pharaohs of Egypt, ruled. In fact, Abydos was thriving for 2,000 to 3,000 years before Pharaoh Khufu envisioned building the mighty pyramids of Giza. A lot of kings and pharaohs before the pre-dynastic times built exquisite shrines and temples and mortuaries millennia in Abydos. Centuries later, Seti I got his chance to add the masterpiece Osirian to the landscape of the city. But a lot of scholars are asking now, what if Osirian was already there when Seti was building magnificent structures at Karnak and simply claimed Osirian as his own? Or maybe he rediscovered and renovated it, when all Chip and Joanna on the site, and brought it back to the folds of daily life. Whatever the case may be, the Osirian shares no resemblance to Seti I's style of architecture. I mean, it's beautiful, a construction made with red granite stones. The temple appears to be a simple, ancient building. But if you are an engineer or an architect and decide to give it a closer look, the deeper you seek, the more confusing and jaw-dropping its secrets appear. First of all, these red granite stones are massive. These colossal stones weigh around 100 tons each. So the question is, how were they carved, transported, and employed to construct the temple? On the surface, the Osirian is just a small building that includes a hall with 2 rows of columns that once supported a stone roof. I mean, the whole structure once stood on a rectangular platform surrounded by a deep moat. The moat was also created by cutting 2 staircases emerging from the surrounding water. The surrounding courtyard itself is one massive and impenetrable wall of 25-foot thick red sandstone, fitted without mortar, with a cornerstone cut and angled much like they are in Cuzco. Funny thing is though, the plan of the courtyard bears a passing resemblance to the head of the Pachamama carved above the sun door at Tiwanaku. Even the knobs carved in relief on sections of the courtyard wall are identical to the ones you'd find in the Andean temples. But that aside, there are no inscriptions to be found inside the Osirian, no dedications, no murals to tell the stories of its creator, and no relics. So if we don't have any evidence to prove Seti I created it, why do mainstream historians really insist on establishing that Seti I constructed it? There's only one set of hieroglyphs in the entire compound that is carved into a wall of adjoining Seti I's stone temple, and it was added during Seti I's time. But again, Seti I's temple looks nothing like its neighbor, the Osirian. For decades, Egyptians insisted that Osirian was a kind of underground chamber that was meant to be an extension of the much larger Seti's temple. But downriver at Giza, the Sphinx Temple and the Valley Temple offer a lot more similarities to the Osirian than any other Egyptian architecture. Like the Osirian, both these temples at Giza were also built with identical megalithic blocks of red granite and used the same clean, graphic layout without using any inscriptions. Geologic surveys have given us definite proof that around 7000 and 8000 BC, North Africa endured a big flood, huge flood, a grand flood they would call it, that raised the Nile's riverbed by about 50 feet. One of the earlier archaeologists to excavate at Abydos, Henri Frankfurt, suggested that once people traveled by boat to get to the Osirian, in a similar way to get to the Sphinx Temple and the Valley Temple. But after the flood ended, the Nile River crept towards the east and a canal had to be built to keep the water levels around Abydos. The Osirian is the only temple known from ancient Egypt to be built below ground level, with maybe the exception of the Labyrinth of Hawara, should excavations prove Herodotus' claims correct in the future. But that's the least interesting part about the architecture of the temple, where ancient Egyptians would go to reenact the death and resurrection of their god of the dead, Osiris. The interesting part is not where they had water coming from in the past, but how is the water emerging today from inside the structure? I mean, it is pressurized water in the middle of a desert. Let's just say you could even pump 500 gallons per minute and you still will get nowhere near dewatering the compound. They tried that back in 1986, and all they found out was that the structures are at least 15 meters deep, and the part visible down there looked like the roof of a 5-story building. The water source? No clue at all. We really have no idea how deep this story goes, pun intended, but let's dig a little deeper. If you're thinking, oh, maybe there's some sort of water reserve down there, like an underground lake or a pond, well, no. It's been confirmed that there's no bedrock under this structure or anywhere nearby. In fact, ground-penetrating radar, seismic technology, and scans from deep wells built in the area did not reveal any rock formations around the Osirian, making it unlikely that rock formations exist in isolation beneath it. And yet there's water flowing out of it like a broken water pipe. And that's not all. The water itself has chemical compositions and other properties that are very different from any other source of water in the vicinity of the location of the temple. It's an enigma to the geologists and researchers, but the interesting thing is there is a connection of how the temple was considered the house of the water of life. It's not a big mystery that somebody had to unravel. At the site, the flower of life symbol can be observed carved onto a massive pink granite pillar. Many people would go to worship there to experience the gate between life and death. Even today, people at Abydos believe that the temple harbors a unique connection between earthly and cosmic energies and consider it a stargate. But does the tomb of Osiris really hold a wormhole to the divine lands? Now if that's true, it would change our knowledge of science and history forever. Hey, but thanks for watching our video. If you enjoyed and learned something, let us know in the comments and like and share the video. Subscribe to Nutty Productions for more videos like this.